from Ohio, Ms. Beatty, who is also the chair of the Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Powell, for being here as you're navigating through all these federal issues during this difficult economic time. Chair Powell, after our hearing concludes, this committee will be voting on a few pieces of legislation. So I'm going to take advantage of having you here to shed some light on a few of the things that we will be considering. I can't think of a better person to give us some insight on these issues. First question is, we'll be voting on an amendment that would delay the SEC's small business advocate from conducting outreach to underserved business owners until after gas prices drop to the pre-COVID level. Chair Powell, in your opinion, will delaying the SEC's outreach to minority business owners affect gas prices in any way?
I'm, with all respect, I'm reluctant to comment on proposed legislation.
Well, let me ask it this. Let's say if it's not legislation, is there a correlation between what gas prices would be in relation to what they were with pre-COVID with inflation?
Again, I'd be expressing an opinion on someone's amendment, and if I start down that road, I don't know where it stops. I really, these are matters for elected people.
Well, would you say that the global markets and inflation is across the country, that we're seeing this everywhere?
Yes, inflation is happening everywhere now.
I'm dealing with a lot of fair housing issues in my district. And, I have a long history of working with public housing and relocating people. And as we look at issues with housing, do you think housing is any way tied to inflation?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question. I apologize.
Do you think what's happening in our housing market is tied to inflation in any way?
Yes, it is. Yes. So housing costs are about a third of the CPI. Housing, we call them housing services, and that's really rents plus the way it works is in effect an owner of a house is charging something called owner's equivalent rent, or paying something called owner's equivalent rent. So yes, it's an important factor in inflation.
Okay. So can you tell us, in your opinion, in light of Congressman Vargas's question, as he was giving us an idea of, as some of our colleagues are trying to tie things to the American Rescue Plan, they're trying to tie it to us taking care of the least of us, that if it is tied to inflation, why in other areas or countries and they don't have the American Rescue Plan? And how do you answer more about Mr. Vargas's question? I mean, I know he gave you a litany. I'm not trying to put you on the spot with quizzing you on what their inflation rate is in comparison to ours, but I think you got where he was going with this. Is there anything else you'd like to elaborate on in relationship to where he was going?
Sure. So I'll just say these things there are differences between, even though we have a very similar inflation rate with a lot of the large European democracies now pretty close, there are differences between countries. And the difference with the U.S. Compared to the European countries is that ours is more about demand. We have areas in our economy where demand is substantially in excess of supply. That's not mainly a feature of the European economies, where they're really feeling, very, very high inflation because of energy prices and also food prices now. That's part of our story too. We're also feeling energy and food prices, but we have this other part that is more core inflation, that is more susceptible to being managed by our tools and is really the object of our tools.
My time is already up, but in light of your response to my first question, I just need to say for the record, I can't conceive of a single connection between gas prices set by global markets and giving advice to small businesses. And the same, I have a hard time coming up with a theory of how allowing discriminatory housing will help stem inflation. And I think my time is up. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Session, is now recognized for 5 minutes.